About 6 months ago, these logs fell off of the tree in my front yard, and I'm going to be turning them into a log chair. But before I can do that, I realized I need a sawhorse. Rhode Island accent coming out. I'm going to be using some 2x6 and 2x4 to build a sawhorse today. This lumber has been seasoning for a couple weeks now out here in my garage. Now what seasoning means is just that you bring the wood into the environment that you're going to be building in, and you allow it to acclimate to that temperature. When you go to start cutting into the lumber, it's less likely to have warpage or any kind of funkiness happening as you're working with it. On the popular woodworking site, I found an article by Tom Donahue, and it included his cut list and his plans for his shave horse. So that is what I printed out and what I'm going to be working off of. But before I can get into my cut list, I'm going to be cutting down my pieces just to make them a little bit more manageable. And then I'm going to be running them through my planer and joiner. I am going to put up a separate video on how to use a planer and joiner because I think they're very important tools that we should definitely take a closer look at. Planers and joiners are designed to flatten the surfaces of your wood so that you have a clean surface to build things, because nobody wants wonky wood. Alright, it is day 2. I have milled all of my pieces to their rough form. I now just need to chop them down to size. And so I'm gonna just move along with the plans here, following what the plans say as far as my cuts go. Most of this is going to be done on the chop saw to get the dimensions kind of down. Some of the trickier round detail-y type things are going to be done on my bandsaw. So I'm having to deal with a little bit of guesswork here. I did go online and try and download the full plans with measurements, but there wasn't one. I couldn't find one, so I was willing to pay for it. But I'm going to basically have to take my drawing here and then kind of make some guesses about some of the things. Like, for instance, this back angle. But since I know that that is going to be here and it's going to be matching up with the front legs and the back legs that are cut at 15-degree angles, because that told me it in the plan, then I know that that has to be a 15-degree angle so that it rides along that same line there. I also don't think it really matters that much. I think it's kind of an arbitrary thing based off of what this design looks like. It's just kind of an aesthetic thing. I don't think it matters functionality-wise what this is going to be. So I'm going to roll with that. I also then figured out what scale this was, which I have my multiplier at 6.564, based off of knowing that from here to here is supposed to be 48 inches. This measurement here is 7 inches and 5/16, so divided the two, and that gave me this as my multiplier, so I could figure out this distance here. Again, this is a bunch of guesstimates because I could not find the actual dimensions. One of the other things I did want to say though is as I'm going through and cutting up my parts, I do like to mark them in chalk with this chalk pencil. The reason why you want to use chalk is you don't want to use anything like pencil or marker or something that's going to stay on the piece. The chalk will be able to wipe off and it doesn't interfere if you're going to be putting finishes on things. This is not going to have a finish because this is just a utilitarian thing, but I always am in the habit of using this, so I just do it anyway. One of the trickier parts of this shave horse was dealing with the angle cuts that needed to be done for the legs, but I think my little shop bandsaw handled it perfectly. I can say that if you don't have a bandsaw and you're trying to build one of these things, you're probably going to have to modify the leg design by adding some blocks to extend it out. The whole point of this angle was to get the legs to splay out so that you don't have this toppling over kind of issue. So it would definitely need a modification in the design if you don't have a bandsaw. Sanding was a must to make sure that anything that was touched had a nice soft feeling and nothing was going to leave me splinters. Aside from the 2x4s and 2x6s, I did need a small piece of plywood. Lastly, I would say the other most complicated part of this piece was the ratchet mechanism, and the ratchet mechanism allowed for the head to be adjusted depending on the thickness of the logs you're dealing with. Alright, this was a total screw up on my part. I glued together the plywood because I totally read the plans wrong, and in the end, it kind of just all worked itself out anyway, so it really didn't matter. I started to mark out and drill some of the holes. Alright, I am at day 3 of this shave horse. This day 3 of actual work. It's basically been over a week now since I've last seen these pieces, which is not really a good thing when you are dealing with milling because you're dealing with wood movement, but life happens and I am teaching 5 classes and trying to work on my things a little bit here and there. I will say if you are able to dedicate some time to doing this project, it should not take you more than 2 days to do. I am at the point where I have cut up just about all of my parts. The next thing I have to do is go in and put a chamfer around all of the hard edges so that it's a nice soft touch, and then it's time for assemble. I do want to say that because I was not able to be out here dedicated to doing this, I did have time in the evenings to do a couple deep dives in the web and was able to find a copy on a blog forum somewhere. Someone had referenced this hybrid shave horse. It was originally published in American Woodworker May 2008 edition, and you can purchase that version. I was able to find an archive of that magazine for $5.99. Inside that magazine had the dimensions. My problem is that I did this, halfway, right? I started thinking I could not find the dimensions, ended up finding the dimensions long after I cut everything. So I still downloaded it because I wanted to double check my guesses, and I had to do a bit of adjusting on my drill holes. So my pieces were okay. I just had to adjust some of the areas that I'm drilling for and make sure that my drill holes line up properly when it comes time to put the whole thing together. So fingers crossed that all of that goes well. I will put a link in the description for the $5.99 copy if you're interested in purchasing it. I highly recommend that you do not do what I did and try and guess at what the dimensions are. For the $5.99, you might as well just download the copy to get the dimensions yourself. I am not going to post these dimensions because obviously it's a copyright issue and I don't want to get in trouble for doing that. My total cost of the wood and hardware and the $5.99 copy set me around $60, not including the plywood, and it's a very small amount of plywood for the seat, so I'm just using scraps of what I had here. So you might want to throw in an extra 15 bucks. As always, I do not recommend woodworking when you have things dangling from you because it is a very big safety hazard. So I will be removing the microphone and going to work. The only joint I needed to cut were the 2 pieces that the treadle connected to. The rest of the shave horse was put together by bolts and screws. Chamfering the edges of the pieces finally let me use this overpriced router table that I keep buried away under my chop saw. The seat was a very simple pattern, however it involved some curves. If you don't have a bandsaw, you probably can get by with doing some of these curves with a jigsaw, but might want to go ahead and do the step of covering it over with upholstered fabric. I did not do that, and I highly regret it. I continue to follow the steps to pre-drill my holes and to assemble some of the smaller parts before the full assembly. Yeah, at this point this is where all hell broke loose and I have no idea what was going on. I was doing my best just to get the thing together without it pretty much falling apart. But since this is me, I eventually worked it out Filipino style. Well, here it is finished, my shave horse, and let's try this puppy out. Well, looks like I'm going to have a long road ahead of me to shave down all the pieces I'm going to need for my chair. But I'm going to conclude this video here. Please like, share, and subscribe if you have not done so already, and I hope to see you soon.